What's up, everybody? My deep thinkers again. We're going to talk about the collective unconscious in the mirror system of perception, which is how this collective um, unconsciousness actually emerges. So, what is the unconscious collective? So, the collective unconscious, it was a concept introduced by Carl Jung. And this refers to a shared inherent reservoir of universal human experiences and archetypes. These are distinct from personal unconscious experiences, which is formed through individual experiences, but it's more collective. So the collective unconscious is a deeper, more fundamental level of the psyche that is common to all humans, regardless of their cultural or individual differences. It's not acquired through personal experiences, but is inherited originating in the structure of the brain. So the collective unconscious contains archetypes, which are universal, primordial images and ideas such as the hero, the mother, the shadow, and the wise old man. We can see this through religion and some of the movies that we watch. There's always certain themes that everyone is usually adept to, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm using that word right, but it's something that most people can relate to, put it that way. Like archetypes, images, and this is sort of manifested through like myths, fairy tales, dreams, and other cultural phenomenon, right? Now, Jung sort of believed that the understanding of this collective unconscious could lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and our place in the world. So, this is sort of distinct from personal unconscious. The personal unconscious contains repressed or forgotten memories unique to the individual, while the collective unconscious is sort of a shared universal reservoir of these sort of things. So, universal fears like those of snakes or spiders, or common human desires for a hero figure or a mother figure or the evil, person. The archetypes may be rooted in the collective unconscious, right? But there's also an unconscious that affects our local cultures, and this is sort of where I'm kind of taking that idea and forming a new sort of paradigm shift here with it. Just something I was speaking to someone about that earlier today, actually. And what happens is we tend to um, get into what I call the mirror system of perception. So, what that really is when, we perceive or experience a certain thing, right? And then that perception sort of goes back into our unconscious to reinforce itself. And then so our personality will adopt these sort of perceptions. It's kind of like if you're around a lot of violence all the time, you may become influenced by that violence. And if you see that all the time, it will go into your unconscious. And so everything that you act out or project onto the world will be a reflection of that sort of loop, that sort of perception that you're constantly digesting in your mind all the time. So the good news about that, though, is you can actually break the cycle, right? So you can sort of, start perceiving things a little different, by exposing yourself to different things that you see, you hear, you read. Um, if you want to really change, if you see these things are sort of unhealthy for you, it might be a time to sort of change what you're always perceiving. And that way you sort of break that cycle. You get on the right side of the train, so to speak, and you can kind of start building a different perceptual reality for yourself. Um, it takes a little time, but that's how the mind works. You can sort of brainwash yourself into a different paradigm, and this affects, cultures. This actually becomes sort of a collective thing, especially when the perception is on a cultural level, especially today, where everybody's looking at the same things on social media, the regular news, the regular entertainment. We start adapting as a culture, as a society, to this sort of messaging, and we're stuck again into the matrix. We kind of went over that in one of my previous videos where I talked about how to escape the matrix by shifting your perception a little bit, right? And so that's kind of what I'm talking about here, is that if we can really observe that and take it serious and maybe try it, um, if you're always, complaining about being broke or being out of shape, unhealthy, whatever the case is, it might be time to shift your perception. And you do that by reprogramming your subconscious, your unconscious mind, right? And you start looking at things that can kind of shape your outlook on the world. Stop looking at so much negative news if it's really affecting you. Stop doing some of these things that you notice are unhealthy, you know. Um, be around people that are supportive, people that are actually there to support your values and ideas and things like that. This helps you to shift your projection onto the world. All starts with your perception, because the biggest part of your brain is that unconscious part, that reptilian mind, as they call it. And this is doing all the hard work of ingesting and processing all the things that you're experiencing during the day. It all goes into your unconscious, and then it just affects your moods, it affects your outlook, and ultimately your behavior and the things you actually do. And so if you really want to, like, for our spiritual woo woo people, if you want to really manifest things in the world, you might want to take in um you know information, perceptions, experiences that support that, right? And reinforce those dreams and reinforce those ideals. And then you'll see that these things change, because look, when you look at people, you always wonder, how is it that this guy is always, doing the great things that I would like to do? Why is he living this life that I like to do? The mind likes to compare and do all these sort of things. Well, you have to find out what's important to you. What are you passionate about? What do you like to do? Start focusing on that stuff, and then start experiencing things that are in support of that, that are in line with that. And on a societal level, you can kind of see how this plays out. There's sort of a fallacy out there called presentism, right? And this sort of relates. Like, presentism is like uncritical adherence to present day attitudes, especially like the tendency to interpret past events in terms of modern values and concepts, right? So, what was acceptable maybe even 20 years ago is not acceptable today. And you notice what people complain about, the moral outrages of today, these same people didn't really give a crap about 20 years ago. They didn't give a shit about it because it wasn't in front of them. It wasn't part of what was taught to them. They weren't brainwashed into that. And I'm not saying it's always bad, like slavery, like, 200, 400 years ago, slavery was normal, right? Not a lot of people cared. Abolitionists came along and they sort of changed the cultural dynamic, and then everyone got on board, and then everybody saw slavery as very immoral. To today, people sometimes judge the past by those sort of paradigms, right? The times have changed. Even what, 20 years ago, conservatives didn't really like gay marriage, right? They weren't for it. They were against it. They didn't want it to happen. They were against homosexuals in a really big way. But today things have shifted. Now it's nobody gives a crap anymore. Nobody cares. because culture has changed. Our dynamic has changed and people have fallen in line because people have been influenced to understand what's right and wrong. So this mirror system of perception sort of applies there too. We can kind of see how engaging in what we perceive and learn about will shift that cultural dynamic over time. It works, but it works individually first. And enough individuals start looking at positive messaging, then society may start becoming more positive. If we start looking at divisive things and that's the message of the day, then of course we become that as a society. And we have to understand that this stuff goes on unconsciously. So we're not even really aware of it most of the time. We're not even aware of these this sort of shifting that goes on all the time. It's the same with music. This is why music and fashion always changes, every so often, every what, 5, 7 years, the music changes. The kids are liking something different. People can, look at this music. Oh, that was old. This is the new thing. Same with fashion and stuff like that. It's the same dynamic going on. You're perceiving and you're being introduced to new things. So, if you really want to grow spiritually, it starts with becoming more self aware. Be aware of the things that are affecting you in a negative way versus those things that are affecting you in a good way. When you first start off just by being aware of it and practicing the principle of unattachment, allowing yourself, giving yourself permission, you know, to like different things. Maybe you see yourself always, you know, reading certain material or engaging in certain material or watching certain movies or listening to certain kind of music. And you wonder, why am I such an angry person? Why am I always up tense? Why am I always acting violent? Why do I have these tendencies? If you ever think to yourself those things, it could be something you're becoming aware of, right? And if you want to change it and shift it, I mean, it sounds pretty common sense if you really think about it. You just turn the channel, change the channel, but it takes a little bit of discipline because you have peer pressure, you have things you're always used to. It's hard to start liking different things. And I would even say, even if it's not, if the music you like or the movies you like or the content you really get into isn't really bothering you, try testing yourself, try looking at different things, try expanding your consciousness, expand into things. Like, I don't like country music, right? But there was a time when I did that practice. I was like, well, let me just listen to country music more. And I started understanding some of the songs. I started singing them and start going in my head. I was reinforcing that perception that country music was pretty normal. It was pretty cool. So you can do that. You can always change out of things, and this can help a culture. A whole culture can change if we're taught this sort of self awareness individually and how to actually become disciplined and how to actually practice the principle of unattachment. It's really powerful and it can change your life for the better. I know it has for me personally. Like, I've been on this journey really seriously for the past 4 or 5 years now. And I changed my environment. I changed my associations. Um, I changed the sort of content that I look at daily. And now look at me. I've got a channel. I'm talking about this stuff. I'm talking about very positive things, philosophical topics, things that are sort of intriguing to people like me. And this shift occurred because I became aware of some things. And then I took action. I became disciplined to actually do something about it. And it helped me. I, I'm making more money than I have before. I'm saving more money than I ever have before. Um, I'm around the people I love to be around. I talk about things I want to talk about more so than I was before because I was not allowing myself. I didn't give myself permission to be more spiritual minded. I used to be a very strong, hard, skeptical type person, very left brained, really fed my left brain a lot. And now I've become a little more creative as a thinker, a little more open, a little more adventurous in my thinking. I've given myself permission to be free, you know, to really consider things, even if they sound a little bit crazy to most people. I've come to embrace a lot of it. Now, a lot of it I haven't, but it's done consciously and intentionally now. It's not just me skating through life unconsciously and just letting myself, be swayed one way or the other and not even know why, not even thinking about it or caring about it. And then wondering, why is my life so stressful? Why does it feel like I'm not really attaining this thing in life that everybody else is? My perception was other people seem to be living the life they want. Why am I not doing that? I'm a smart person. I'm real disciplined at being logical and skeptical. And, you know, you have to understand that life isn't always about just that. If that's not who you are, really. If you've got another side to you that's more creative, more intuitive, if you have a side like that, that when you indulge in that, it makes you sort of happy or gives you an endorphin rush or a serotonin hit, do it, man. But it starts with being aware, starts with admitting these sort of things to yourself. And yeah, and I just love to share this kind of information. I like to talk about all kinds of things now. I really feel free. I feel a lot more free to express myself in that way. This mirror system of perception works, and it works pretty fast too. It really does. It's just a matter of how much focus you put on it. You have to focus on that. And it's really cool to realize the change. Like when you start seeing these changes, it's kind of exciting, you know. And so, yeah, life is good, man. Life has gotten better. I want the same for you. And again, I'm going to always try to put out something positive. I'm always going to try to be creative and think and come up with something. So please, if you like that sort of content, please like and subscribe and give me some, feedback in the comments, man. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think about the unconscious collective. Express yourself, man. Let me hear you. Let me get to know you. Like and subscribe to the channel. Every weekend I have conversations with people, my group. I'm forming a bigger and bigger group. We all get together and we call in and we talk and we discuss all kinds of weird stuff. And you're welcome. Everybody's welcome to do it. We stay respectful and we have a good time. That's what life's all about, having a good time. And so I want to really dedicate some time to that side of my life. And I would invite you to do the same if you're so predisposed for it. Anyways, guys, this is going to be it. Till next time.